Next important thing to think about is triggers. They're critical for making anything important happen in a mission, and I'm just going to demonstrate the basics of how one works. Like, the details will come later. So, insert it like any other unit. Axis A is the horizontal axis, left to right. Axis B is vertical. The angle is the rotation. This is not helpful if your trigger is elliptical, but if it's rectangular, or if it's stretched out like it's an oval, the angle will make a difference. The activation determines how it's activated. Whether the east is what it looks for, west, resistance, civilian, or antibody, or game logic. I'll explain everything of that later. Or you can activate it via radio. Typing in radio alpha means you'll have to use the keyboard shortcut 001 to turn it on. This controls whether it's activated once or constantly, and if you have one of the presence activations, like east, west, resistance, if they're within the radius of the trigger, then if they're present, it'll activate. If they're not present, it'll activate. If they're detected by somebody, then it'll activate. The countdown basically means that if you type in a number, min, max, mid, the trigger will count down to some point in time that is within the minimum and the maximum, gravitating towards the mid. So if you have minimum 0, a max of 4, and a mid of 1, it'll be any time between 0 to 4 seconds that it'll activate, either immediately to 4 seconds, and gravitate towards 1 second most of the time, which is probability. Timeout means that you have to satisfy the conditions of the trigger at some point between these two for long enough, and then it'll activate. So if it's the same properties in a timeout, you have to stay within the trigger and keep its conditions active for as long as a period of time that's selected from here is, instead of being activated and then counting down. The type is a bit more complex. None, you can keep it as none. That just means it'll do whatever you want it to. I'll explain everything later in more detail, but for now, none is the default system. I'm going to focus on the special ones. Guarded by east, west, and resistance function in conjunction with guard waypoints, which I'll explain momentarily. Switch is used for, it works with synchronization, so I'll explain that afterwards. And these are the endings I talked about. Getting any of these endings will move you on to outro win. Getting loose moves you on to outro lose. The text basically means that's, first of all, how the trigger is going to appear once you place it, and the name is used for variable reference. So if I place a trigger, it looks as trigger, I type in text, that. My trigger appears as that. So if you have radio alpha, and you type in 00 before you select 1, it'll display IPO, and that's how you identify what it is. So if I set this as radio alpha and type in, hey, this text. Preview, type in 001, hey, this text. The trigger doesn't do anything for now. Okay, continuing on. This is all scripting. Condition, this is what it requires for the trigger to be active. Basically, what this means, you have to have this in this field. This means that all these properties are what are required to activate the trigger. Putting anything else in the condition field and not including this means that activating the trigger through the menu over here will not work. On activation is scripting. On deactivation, this is self-explanatory. And then the effects tab. You can add another activation condition here that is checked after the trigger itself has been activated. Then you have camera effects. First of all, you have several types of cameras available here, and you can set the orientation to the unit. You can use this to create like basic cutscenes, but there are much better ways to make cutscenes. This is actually really, if you make a mission with these, it just gives off a vibe of amateurishness because everyone uses them, and they're not well suited to your specific task. They're very general. Sounds means that you have all these various sounds, or usually voices, and if you select one, it'll sound like it's coming from all around you. A voice means that a unit within the trigger will actually say it, lip syncing and everything, and the sound will originate from them. Environment is just environmental sounds, stuff like you'll hear sea backgrounds, you can hear combat, you can hear winds and various things. And trigger is just a sound effect that originates from the source of the trigger. So yeah, anonymous all around you, A single sound environment is a looping sound. Voice originates from a unit within the trigger, and the trigger originates from the trigger's point itself. Music is obvious, and titles. So, text. Next, you just type something in, and then you have an effect associated to it. You can experiment with those on your own. They're straightforward. Resource just flashes something like maybe a picture that someone already predefined, like the BI Studio logo. If you type that in and start the game, the Bohemia Interactive Studio logo will fade in and then fade back out. And you can have some associated effects with that as well. And object actually spawns a three-dimensional object from which you could view things from. It's a bit more complicated than that. Like, let me just demonstrate. If you have TV set going on and the trigger is activated, look what happens. Yeah. It would otherwise fill the whole screen, but once again, the next important thing is waypoints. Now, to declare a waypoint, you select a unit and then double-click somewhere. And you have a variety of waypoint types. Move is move. Destroy means you'll destroy something. Get in means you'll get into a vehicle. Seek and destroy is a search pattern. Join is you select a unit and you will join them. Join and lead is the same thing as join, only you will then take control, no matter what. And that means anything that you have in a vehicle will be, disembarked. Cycle means that you will go back to your closest waypoint except the last one. Basically useful for making patrols. Load means that all units that you have will board a vehicle in your group. Unload means all vehicles that have cargo space will disembark their units. Transport unload means that if you have units from other groups in there, they will force them out. Hold means you will hold this position until something forces the waypoint to change that uses triggers. Sentry means that the unit will hold its position until it identifies an enemy. Guard works in conjunction with guard triggers, and basically if there is a trigger that has a guarded by option, and a unit has a guard waypoint, it will go guard the trigger. Talk is redundant, it just makes you say something. You don't actually move to the waypoint, it just plays the sound. Scripted runs a script, it's redundant because you can just use the on activation field. And support means a unit will be standing by, and if you have an ambulance you can support, ambulance, repair truck, fuel, all that stuff. And if you have your own group, you can hit 5-1 to call support, and any unit that has a support waypoint will come help you if it fits the type. The waypoint orders, if you have more than one waypoint, you can affect the order of waypoints. So like, let's say I have these waypoints, move, seek and destroy, and move. If I select seek and destroy and set it to 0, now seek and destroy will be my first waypoint. Next up is waypoint description. When you set up a waypoint and you're in cadet mode and the waypoint comes up on your HUD, it will display the name of whatever type it is. So if you have a move waypoint, it'll say move. If you have a destroy waypoint, it'll say destroy. If you, however, enter a description, then you will get whatever description you put in as the name that comes up on your HUD. So to demonstrate, my first waypoint here is a move. As I move closer, it says just move. But that seek and destroy waypoint, I put move here idiot as the description, and that's what will come up. Next up is the combat mode. This is for AI. Never fire means they'll never shoot. Hold fire means that they will wait until they're engaged. Hold fire means that whenever they're engaged, they'll open fire at whoever they want without command from the leader. And open fire, engage at will is the same thing, but open fire means that they'll just attack freely. Formation is the formation, that should be obvious. Behavior. Careless means that their weapons will always be on their back, no matter what. Safe means that they'll start off weapons on back, but as soon as there's trouble, they'll draw them. Aware is the standard state. Combat means they'll start moving as if they're in combat, and stealth means they're trying to hide. Speed, this is straightforward. Limited means they're just going to be like walking. Normal means they'll just be normally walking, and full means they'll be sprinting as much as possible. Placement radius means that the waypoint will spawn anywhere within the given radius. The timeout actually functions identical to the trigger's countdown, and I know that's confusing, but that's the way it is. Any period of time between the min-max gravitating towards the mid has to pass in order for the waypoint to be considered completed. The condition and on-activation are just like the triggers. The condition has to be set to true for any of these parameters to affect the satisfaction of the waypoint. Never show means you'll never see the waypoint on your map. Show in cadet mode means you will see the waypoint on your map in cadet mode, and always show means you'll always see it. Script is only used for scripted type waypoints. I'll explain those later because that's scripting, and the effects menu is pretty much identical to that of a triggers. I'm going to be glossing over the synchronize button because that is a bit more complex, and once we start getting to intermediate-ish tutorials, I'll explain how you can use that. But for now, we'll just gloss over that because you really don't need it. Last but not least, there are markers. Now, markers are some pretty straightforward stuff. Just double click, and then you have to have some sort of name. The color is the color, icon is the icon. You can experiment with those. Axis A is horizontal. Size, axis B is vertical, angle is the angle. By the way, any of these could be decimals, that's fine. The text is just what appears next to it, so if I would test and hit OK, there's the marker. Please note you can only see it in marker mode. Any other mode on top, if you look at the bars, you don't see it, but on 6 you do have 6 markers. You can still manipulate the marker even though you can't see it on the other modes. The other buttons here, rectangle and ellipse, are basically, the marker is the exact same thing, except instead of being an icon, it's a radius of some sort, right? Wait. So, yeah, in this case, it's a black square, because the color is default. If I make it black, it comes out black. If I make it red, it comes out red, right? I can adjust the radius and make it much bigger, or I can set it to be elliptical. And the fill changes the type of fill. So, vertical means it looks like this, grid means it looks like this, and I can rotate it. One second. The grid, by the way, and the fill, if it says vertical and horizontal, that is always going to be the same. It doesn't rotate with the marker. And that's it. That concludes this tutorial. I'll be making another one. I'll put an annotation up to it once it's there. That we'll start putting some of this to use. And I'll begin to cover some slightly more advanced topics.